not need all the other supports they need for the rest of their academic day. And that's huge because we know that our kids, if we don't have them connected to their community, they're isolated. And if they're, who said it here, if they're not connected to their community, they're more, and they're isolated, they're more at risk for depression, they're more at risk for suicide. And that is the one thing that you guys have to know. As much as anybody talks about anything, and you're like, and I know you still have a question that I'm going to come back to. As much as anybody talks to you about anything else, what you have to think about, if you're going to be with a child for multiple years as their physician, you have to think about the end point, which the end point is they need a job. They need to be able to do something. So what is always in the back of my mind? Because a job is the one way that so are they going to be friends with the guy that owns the pizza parlor that's going to give them a job? That might be because they were both in the jazz band, but it's also, do they have the skills that they need to like talk to the customers, all those other things. So what I would say to you is that's always, because you're going to be with the family for years. If you're like a family care physician, you're going to be with that family for years. The teachers will come and go. That family's going to need, I was so happy when a psychiatrist said, this made me so, I get a little off yours, but did it a little bit answer your question about how we use the arts? A physician said to us, we had a one-on-one assistant with a child, and lots of times people want one-on-one assistants. They think that's going to help a child be successful. And really, the research is a little ambiguous on that, to be honest with you. And I was so happy when it was the physician, not me, that said to the family, at a certain point, nobody's going to college with them, so when are we going to start backing off on that one-on-one assistance? And the reason why it was beautiful from the physician is because I think sometimes people think that schools don't want to, we do need to be fiscally responsible, but sometimes people think we don't want to spend money. That's not really exactly what it is, but sometimes parents might even think we're trying to save a little money, we want to get rid of the aid.
Also coming from a physician, people will think that, you know.
Right, that it's not about money. So the fact that the doctor said it, not me, gave it so much more credibility in that family's eyes. It helped us so much move that discussion forward to get that kid to be more independent. Anyway, blah, blah. Tell me what your question was. Do you remember after all this time?
Yeah, I actually have two now, but one of them is do the kids who don't have the iPads, or even the kids like without ASD, do they get jealous of the kids with the iPads? Like, are there fights over the iPads?
No.
Or are they so just not game oriented that it doesn't really matter?
That's a great question.
I think it depends on the students, to be honest. Like I have one class where I have a student who wants to play with the iPad, but it's the student, it's assigned to him for communication, not because of assistive technology, so it's kind of a different line. And like, no, you're taking his voice away. That's like saying don't ever talk again. And then, so that's a hard concept for him to understand. He's very chatty. But wait a minute, maybe I can just play a game and share it with him, and then he can talk to me during the game. No, you know, he's trying to figure out how to get on the iPad. I think that a lot of our students have access to other devices, like they, you know, have the computers accessible. Some have laptops.
They all have a
So
phone. It makes me
a lot of
crazy.
them have phones.
Yeah.
In
How old are
elementary,
these kids?
how old are they?
Oh, I tell you, if you want to talk about, I'm talking about in 4th grade, lots of kids have phones.
That's.
Oh, I'm serious. Where we live, where we work, I'm not saying that's everywhere, but where we work, it's very, and I actually have, it makes me crazy. But that's the future. I mean, I think my son has a writing disability, and so he uses, just from my own experience as a mom, talking to my son, I've always pushed technology with him for the writing disability because really, it just really is a way to increase his output. All through elementary, middle school, fine, we live in a very small town, so I don't know if that has something to do with, everybody knows him. And it was no issues with the technology, nobody questioned it, nobody was curious about it, it was just, that's what Matt needed. At first, because I'm me, I was trying to push the school to like, get multiple so everybody would have access, right? Or, well, if we're gonna do that, let's get tape recorders for everybody, you know, like, so there'd be multiples that they could check out instead of it ended up being that I was overly worried about something I didn't need to worry about, was an issue. Where I got into more trouble with the technology was in high school, and it was more because he didn't want to be the only one using it, as opposed to anybody, you know, wanting it, saying anything. It's like he went from our little community to a big high school, and he didn't want to be the one kid in the class having that. And then, oh my God, that's hard as a mom, because what do you say, you know? I mean, what do you do? He's like looking out for his social well-being, which is pretty darn important when you're a freshman in high school, versus me looking out for, I want you to have good grades so you can go to college. So, I mean, really trying to balance that shop, and I do think that stuff comes up sometimes. So
There
anyway,
was an article in the New York Times on Sunday, I don't know if anybody read it.
The Syria?
The
article?
series.
No, we
Yeah,
talked
you
about
guys
that.
talked about that?
Yeah.
I just thought that was so interesting. I don't know if you
I don't
read
read
it.
it.
So,
I hate the New York Times, it stresses me out. But anyway.
Super fun up there.
New York Times takes me up.
paper from Sue.
yeah.
Because I feel like I have to read everything in it. So anyway,
So, but you already had that conversation.
Yeah, it was,
Yeah, I thought that was pretty interesting, because I can see that.
Sorry, I have a question. Go back to kind of your story. You were talking about your son, right?
yeah.
Yeah, about that. We were talking with Jane from the
Grogan
from
Center.
the Grand
Yeah.
Center,
I couldn't remember her last name.
Carlson. And she was talking about how this one young man who was kind of on the higher end of the autistic spectrum, like he knew he was autistic, but he didn't want other people to know, so he just kind of he went to the normal classrooms and he tried to regulate himself. And so like whenever he did end up in like the autistic classroom, like it was because something really bad like triggered him. He was kind of like having a meltdown. And I was like, do you guys like run into that problem where there are kids who like should be in your classes, but they're like high enough functioning that they know that it might damage them socially, so they don't want to be? And like, how do you deal with that?
Well, I see it probably more than Sue, because in the gym setting, you know, one characteristic, and I don't know if anybody had this, they have to be first in line. Somebody have that paper?
didn't make a line, I was
I know, I should have, yeah,
I have a
sorry.
child that has to be that.
Yeah,
Actually,
there are a lot of kids that have
a
that.
side note, I taught a summer camp in Olneyville, debate, and that was one of the biggest things.
And
Being
so,
first.
Being first in line,
being
every child.
first in line and
Yeah,
taking
and there's no-
turns
you
and
can't.
sharing. And so that's when I start to see, and Rachel can attest to this a little bit more than Sue, because I've known her so much longer. But when I first started learning about autism, I was just diagnosing everybody as having something, you know. So, and that was one characteristic that I see. I think all of us have some piece of it, to be honest. Push you out of the way. You know, that students, but they want to be first and they want to win and they want to be in a PE class, let's say, or on a team, even though they know they're not the best anymore. And trying to understand that, where some people can modify that. And so what I do, typically, I can see that right away, and they're not my students. And I think, oh, maybe they should be, because I can help them, you know, practice. I had a student who, for 4 years, we played Uno every time so he could learn how to lose. We figured out after 4 years, we let him try PE, and he hit the PE teacher when he made a referee call that he could only do individual sports. I mean, you know, it was just like, it wasn't like it wasn't a success story. I felt like it was. We figured out what worked for him. And so when the kids were playing team sports, at our high school, one of the high schools I teach at, we give the students a choice, team sports or individual sports, each unit that we teach, which is very inclusive. We're lucky. There's another high school that I teach at that only has one sport, and I'm there all the time helping a student of mine who is struggling, unless it's an individual sport. And so this is just some of the things that we do in terms of trying to strategize. I realize that some people should just be in an individual sport because of that winning, losing thing. Now, working on the line, that's where Sue said good teaching. I spend a lot of time, we have these hippity hop balls, you guys know those balls? So, and you guys bounce with a handle. And the students absolutely love them, but I only have 2. You know, so, you know, I'd like to have, you know, I was also talking about our preschool where our children went. Our preschool teacher had 8 of every single toy known to man. There's
Is that Miss Lee?
yeah, yeah. So anyway, both of our collective 3 children went to the same preschool, and I kept thinking, wow, like what's the point here? Like it took me a while to realize that at certain ages, certain people can't share. And then I realized through my education experience, we have to teach people how to share. And that doesn't always come naturally, and that can be something of a trigger. So I spend a lot of time counting to 10 and teaching them how to count to 10 and what it means to take a turn. And those hippity hops go flying, because it doesn't matter, like, you do 10 and then you give it to somebody else. Even if nobody else wants it, I'll get on it, so that they can understand. And then when they're done with their 10, sometimes they're hippity hop comes flying across the gym. But I think that that's something that we have to teach. And when you're saying all the kids want to be first, they don't have the ability to realize that, somebody is just as valued as they are. They don't have that part, and that's where we have to teach them. We have to teach them that there are other people in the world.
So although your question about kind of going on with that, is what their own kind of self-determination is versus what we as the adults think is right for them. That's huge. One thing that you should know is when they turn 14, they participate in the IEP process, so they do get to have input into that discussion. And if we do that well, we should be taking into account their thoughts. So for example, a kid might need to leave their class to calm down, but it doesn't mean he's got to come see me. I mean, if he doesn't want to. So maybe his place to come down is a corner of the library that's set aside for him, that he's fine to go. Lots of kids are reading in the library. If he can be responsible, if we can have that trust that that's where he's going to go, and we might even do that. But plus, there's a phone call from the receiving teacher to the two teachers. Yeah, he's here. So what we try to do is actually make kids part of the decision, because then it's not so much of a thing where it's us imposing. The couple things that I see developmentally happening, though, two things, is little kids want to leave with you and they don't care, like, "Ooh, Dr. Hurley's here, woo," and they all want to go, and I love that because we have fun, and then as they start to hit 8th grade for me, I see a little bit more, like they don't want me to come show at the classroom door, like they want it to be a little more discreet, so I have the secretary call and go to the office. They know when they're called to the office, they're not going to the office, they're coming to me. But you do try to take into account what they need and what they want. The other thing I think as doctors that you guys will have to deal with this, and this is the hard one for me. Like lots of things we can work on, we can make it work, right? One comes into play is medication, because sometimes people choose that they don't want to take medication anymore, and that's very hard for me to see somebody that's functioning beautifully on medication. And I just had